Time is one of the most precious commodity, and you don't want to be dedicating 8 hours of your day to something, or 9 hours of your day to something. Some people it's even longer, 12 hours a day to something for X amount of years, 5 times out of the week, and then you walk away from that and you have nothing. To walk when you walk away, you have nothing. You don't.
Okay, hey. I wonder if I'm audible. Sometimes I'm not. All right, hey y'all, welcome to another Sips and Conversations Live. I'm your host, Nancy Ngwa, and today I'm sipping on some tea, okay? Some ginger tea. It's so, so, so good. And yes, in my best sister ever cup because I'm the best sister ever. Y'all already know Sips and Conversations is brought to you by Sips and Conversations, and of course, Needs Cuisine, home of the best barbecue sauce. And I need to do a better job about like just bringing a bottle of sauce so y'all can see this incredibleness. But if you're not already, go ahead and follow Needs Cuisine and all that good jazz. Today I've got a great treat for y'all. Okay, got a great treat for y'all. We've got Greg Lacy from the Speak My Piece podcast, and super excited about having this conversation. Obviously, just in time for Black History Month. Do welcome on, Mr. Greg. I think there we go.
How you doing?
Hey, Greg, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
No, I'm super, super excited to have you on the conversation. I got hyped with our intro call. And so, yeah, before we get started, go ahead and let everybody know who you are and what you do, and then we'll jump into the convo.
Yeah, so currently I'm an integrated media planner. As you said, I'm the host of the Speak My Piece podcast, a podcast I founded about 4 going on 5 years ago now. With the integrated media planning, what I do in my career is really just doing research and finding out the perfect audience for the brand that I work for. And as we implement new shows, I won't say who I work for, but it's a streaming company. And what we do is they bring to us, new shows every quarter, and we have to find the perfect audience to, bring to the platform and watch these new shows. So I enjoy doing that. And then in my spare time, I run my podcast, I play basketball, I run, watch sports and different things like that. Enjoy spending time with my family, but
Yeah.
essentially, the host of the Speak on Peace podcast is what I'm most proud of.
Yeah. So why is that something that you are the most proud of with all the things, right? Like you're a media. I can't even. We're gonna get into that here in a second because I gotta understand a media planner,
Yeah.
um, what that entails and how you even got into that. But why is us your podcast like one of the things you're the most proud of?
I'm most proud of it because it's me seeing something from growing something for one from the infancy stage. So seeing, where I started and where I could go and where I could take things, but also just getting feedback. And I
Yeah.
think that this past season, I really got excited about it because I kind of got more personable than I had ever been. And so I started to see a lot of feedback on and just, the stories that I was sharing that I never shared before and how people could relate to them, but also how my stories were helping people. So I think sharing those things and sharing tools that help me deal with whether it was anxiety, whether it was depression, whether it was job searches, whatever the case may be, seeing people's responses to that was like put that kind of charge in my back to like, okay, I can continue to go with this. A lot of times you start something, whether that's a business, whether that's a media company, whether it's a podcast, you try not to worry too much about just the audience and who's tuning in and who's watching and who's
Mhm.
listening. And in the beginning, I didn't worry about that too much, but as time accumulates, I start in the back of my mind, like, worry, like, well, I don't even know if people are actually listening. I don't know if people actually care. So I started to get that feedback. It really just let me know just how important my voice is and one, speaking about the topics that I'm speaking about, but also just being vulnerable in the things that I speak about.
Oh, vulnerable. That's a really good word. So why did you start? You said you in the beginning you didn't really care what people were even thinking, but then it changed. And so why did you start to begin with, if it was
I
not
think
to care, right?
think my main reason was really just looking for an outlet to speak about certain things. I had, at the point I started my podcast, I had been away from like actively using social media for about 3 or 4 years at that point. And so what happened when I
Jeez,
stopped actively,
wow. What
yeah.
does that mean though? Like active, you were not actively using social media. Please define
So
that.
in the beginning, I just stopped posting, stopped using it altogether.
Yeah.
As years went on, I kind of like missed being on social media, so
Mm.
I wasn't posting, but I was still scrolling,
Yeah.
seeing funny things and different like things like that, sharing that with my friends. So
Yeah.
if you just follow me, you wouldn't know that I'm on social media because I'm not posting anything. I'm not posting anything on my story. But if you're my
Gotcha.
friend, you know I'm on social media because we're sending videos to each other back and forth in the DMs or certain things like that. So
Yeah.
on the outside looking in, you don't know that I'm on social media, but I'm actually am on social media and I'm looking and laughing at the funniest things.
Yeah, okay, so that's what not being active on social media means. Okay, I've never, I mean, I just never was, I was always like, what does that mean? I'm not active on social media. Yeah, it
Yeah,
just means you're deactive, you're active, but like in the background.
yeah,
Okay. Um, and so then your outlet was more so your podcast and sharing your voice.
yeah.
Yeah. So what spawned that, right? Like what spawned you needing to have that outlet?
Um, just had too much time on my hand at the time. When I started the podcast, I was an undergrad at St. John's University, and I was within like my last, I think two. I think it was like I started like my last 2 or 3 semesters. So I was really, getting a lot of work done and seeing that in the finish line when I probably should have been focused on looking for a job. But I had a lot of free time. I was in New York. I'm a Compton kid and was in New York for a while. So I was really just getting in tune with the city and exploring the city. And I just had free time. I was traveling and a lot of things like that. And so with that free time, I was like, okay, I have too much free time. I need to figure out something productive to do. So
Yeah.
instead of getting on a job search a year earlier, I was like, bro, podcast is something that I really like, and I can see that as an outlet. And I have a lot of things, that I feel like I can speak about. So I use podcasts as really that medium.
Gotcha. My earbud just. I was trying to make an adjustment. Rhonda's saying that she can't hear me that great, but I wonder
I
if
can
it's
hear
my.
you.
Huh?
I can hear you. I can hear you clear. I wonder if it's maybe because I'm on live with you, I can hear you clear. But yeah, I can hear
Right,
you.
exactly. I don't know. We'll see. I restarted my earbuds to see. Hopefully
Okay.
that this helps out, but it's not picking it up. Oh, geez, me and technology, we just don't go well together.
Technology, it chooses the best time to be dysfunctional. It's always the wrong time for technology.
Oh, she said it's actually better now. So I wonder
Okay.
if it isn't the fact that I had my earbuds in. Okay. So maybe I should just take this out. She does sound a little distant. What? But do I sound?
I can hear you. I think maybe I can only hear you that good because we are like in the same live and it's sharing the same value. That's weird.
Right. Okay, y'all. Look, give me a heart if you can hear me well, because I don't know who to believe now. A lot better now.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm taking out these earbuds. I'm sitting here trying to be a whole professional, okay, with my microphone and things, and I don't even need the fancy things in life. Okay, so much better. Thank you, Rama, for letting me know. All right, and for all y'all in the chat, for letting me know that that was not very audible. Totally appreciated that. So, you had time on your hands. You decided to go, start your podcast and the kind of stuff that you were talking about. One thing that I really love about your platform is it's about Blackness
Yeah.
And why is that so important to you, talking about, the Black community?
I understand that a lot of times when we don't see ourselves, when we don't have that representation, it can kind of go miss, and that can be a problem. I say I grew up in Compton, but I split. I grew up in Compton up until middle school. From middle school beyond high school, I lived in the suburbs, and so I seen a disparity in how, I guess, things surrounding Black culture, how the disparity between those things are. So growing up in Compton, we had Black History Month, and it was a month-long celebration. We had parades, we had wherever the case may be, and this was in school. And so Black history in itself was covered a different way in the curriculum in school. And then I move away in the middle school and high school and go to the suburbs, and it's not covered the same. You may get one day of talking about Black History Month. You don't get any parades or celebrations at all. The way that Black history is covered is different. And so I started to understand that if we rely on, not rely, but if we allow other people to tell our story, a lot of times the most important factors in that, it can go missed. And so as I started to really get into my podcast and find my niche, I realized like, okay, that thing that I missed when I was growing up and I separated from the community that I grew up in, I can serve as this for other people. Because, you know, we hear a lot of podcasts, and, you know, today everybody has a podcast, and we see it a lot with men. Unfortunately, they have podcasts and they're just talking about stuff that no one cares about. They're doing it for clickbait. And so I saw a lane for myself to really just speak about things that were important, but also share things that are important. So you'll see a lot, just like on my podcast page, within my podcast stories, me sharing Black stories, because I know how important it is to share those things.
Yeah. Because to allow you to have your own control of your own voice, right? So what is some topics that are just really big to your heart right now and within the Black community?
Right now, so recently I just released today actually I released an episode around just the whole conversation around snitching. And that was really a deeper dive into just gatekeeping culture. Just understanding that, like, you know, we hear a lot about the YSL record label and Gunna and different things like that, and these different rappers who are involved with like criminal charges and people calling them snitches and upholding certain street standards and things like that. And so how I tied that back into gatekeeping is like a lot of times if you go to these artists or entertainers profiles, the people who are calling them rats, people who are calling them snitches are not people from our culture. So they're providing opinions on young Black men, and they're shaping the life of young Black men because they have such a following. Jay-Z has this bar in the song where he says the labeling of a snitch is a lifetime scar. You'll always be in jail, just minus the bar. And that line hit me hard because, you know, that's something you have to live with, no matter if you actually did what people are saying you did or if you didn't do it. And so when we allow people who are not of our culture to speak on certain things like that, and that dictates a young Black man's future, that's going to, you know, dictate, you know, how they feed their family. That's going to dictate how they provide for their children. That's going to dictate just a lot of things that they may be doing within their community as well. And so I spoke about that in my most recent episode. Also, one of the things I'm going to speak about, just accountability, understanding the things that we speak about, the things that we share, and how we use our voice and how that affects our community, whether it's helping us, you know, build each other up or tearing us down by sharing demeaning things or speaking in a demeaning way.
Yeah. You said in a demeaning way, right? And accountability. When you say demeaning, like what's the weight behind that word?
It's heavy. I mean demeaning in a way to where we're sharing, you know, we're using our social media platforms to share gossip of what someone is doing in personal life, how someone is parenting, what someone is doing in their relationship. We see it a lot, unfortunately, on Twitter with, you know, young Black men speaking down on Black women and not understanding how that affects the youth that's coming up behind, the generation behind them, and how they date and the people they search for and the partners they, you know, fall in love with, different things like that. I think a lot of those are demeaning, and I think because we use social media as a platform a lot for something as leisure, we'll understand how those conversations we have and the narratives we share, how it affects the generation after us, because majority of the time they look up to us because we are the older cousins, we are the uncles, we are the older brothers. And so they look to us a lot of times as superheroes. And if we speak in this certain way about a certain group of people, and that certain group of people is our people, no matter what the gender is, they're going to follow along and speak that same way.
Yeah. I think it's very important to speak life into one another.
Yes.
You know, Black man on Black man, Black woman on Black woman. My girl Rama is in here. That is my sister from another mother. Okay. But our friend group that she and I are a particular part of, we and her own friend group, a really huge, and then me and my separate friend groups, right? we're very intentional about pouring into one another.
Yeah.
And when I say that, I mean like real, true, Robert said, protect black women.
Yeah.
Yes. Real, true, intentional, like sisterhood. And that means like we hold each other accountable. We have goals that we set. We are all doing our own thing, running in our own lanes, and we intentionally checking on one another. Okay, how is this going? You know, I've got my barbecue sauce. My sisters from other misters, right,
Yeah.
are intentionally buying my products. I'm intentionally showing up for things that they're doing. They're intentionally getting me in rooms and vice versa. We intentionally check in on one another, and share the good things that each of us are doing. And I don't see enough of that.
Yeah, you know what? And it's a double-edged sword with that. I'm glad you spoke on that because I kind of recently just started appreciating that. Because even when I first started my podcast, like a lot of, obviously, if you start something out new, your first couple supporters are going to be the people who know you best.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of my listeners consisted of family members and friends and different things like that. And so as I was starting out with the podcast and I'm paying attention to people who are sharing stuff and sharing my content, it was like, I appreciate that my family and my friends are sharing it, but I wish it was somebody else. And then as of late, I started to realize, like, no, that is the core of just who I am because I'm so family oriented. That is who's going to be the people who ride for me the hardest because my family, like I have a big family, but my family is really close, which you don't see a lot with a lot of big families. And so when I started to realize that, like, no, this is just the core of who I am, and that's always going to be, no matter what I'm going to do, that's going to be the core of the people who are going to support me and pour into me. So I started to really appreciate that more as I continue on this journey of trying to build my brand, but also improving myself, understanding that that is important. Like that is what I strive off of. Everything else outside of that, it's great. It's a plus. But as long as I'm getting that, I understand that that can continue to push me to become a better version of myself.
Yeah. I mean, Mo, Sharice, she said, period.
Speaking of family, that's one of my cousins.
That's one of your cousins. Yeah, it's so important to have like family that really rides for you. You know, me being West African, like we are like family is super important to us, right? However, when you come from really big families, sometimes you do have conflicting thoughts and priorities. And so I understand the clash that can happen. And I'm really fortunate to have parents. My parents have been married for 40 years, which is like, it's
Man.
like major.
That goes for real.
I was either listening to something or I saw something. It was like, yeah, my so-and-so married for 40 years, and they're like in a row. Like yes, in a row. And so, you know, so not only we watch them be really close with each other, and so and then they in turn have always wanted us to be really close. And so when we talk about the dynamics, right, the Black family dynamics and the dynamic of the community, one thing is when I say parents married for 40 years, people, and it's not just a Black thing, right? It's in other cultures where you don't see that anymore. And if people are married for that long, it's like they hate each other, they're not friends or whatever. Like when I say like these people they are partners in life. They are best of friends and they respect each other. What are your thoughts about just like Black family dynamic and thought process when it comes to like the true setup, right, of a family? Like what's your thoughts on that?
I think one thing, when speaking about just how you said, you know, a lot of times when there's so many people, thoughts and things clash. And I think that that's healthy. I think that it's important to not share the same ideas as the people you love and care about. Like a lot of times that's the norm. You're going to have the same ideas because for one, you were either raised by that person, you were raised around that person, or you were raised with that person. So a lot of your likings and a lot of things that you take to are going to be the same. But I think that when you have different personalities and you have different ideas, that allows for improvement, but also allows for different perspective. Like I can't wholeheartedly say that me and I wouldn't go with my entire family. I don't think that wholeheartedly me and my siblings share the same thoughts and ideas about everything. We were raised by the same person. We were raised in a single parent household. So, you know, all of our core values came from the same person, but our ideas on certain things, you know, they're different. One example I want to use is, you know, my brother. You know, we grew up in a single parent household. My brother got married very young. And I think this year is going to be his fourth. I think it's his 14th year anniversary this year.
Wow.
And he got married at 19. And I was telling you
Wow.
offline before we got on that like I thought at 19 I also wanted to be married and have a kid. And I look back on it like I'm glad I did not do that because I was not ready for that.
Yeah.
But it's just we have, different like at 18 he knew who he was going to marry. At 19 he knew who he was going to spend the rest of his life with. I thought I did, and I'm glad that it didn't work out that way because it wouldn't have turned out the way that I expected it to be. So we have different opinions of that, but I still understand the importance of, having that role model, having that example of, everything doesn't have to be a certain way just because you see it a certain way. So because we grew up in a broken household, it doesn't mean that we have to follow those same patterns of what we seen growing up, and that it's okay to branch out and be different.
Yeah, no, it's definitely okay to branch out and to be different. Actually, I never thought about it from that perspective of um, just because you grew up in a broken home doesn't mean that you should continue to grow up in a broken. You should
Yeah.
continue to have broken homes. I've actually never really thought about it in that way because what you hear a lot of is like more so, and again, it's like using social media to demean, right? Because you hear a lot of like just bashing of people not respecting, the family structure, and it's like, well, everyone's family doesn't look the same, and then things happen, right? Like, what if you would have had a child with at 19 years old and you're no longer in that relationship? You're allowed, that's a part of your story, and
Yeah.
you're allowed to grow really and truly in that way. And I'm not an advocate for people staying in any situation just because you want to meet the status quo, or I just I can't really stand that. And so you had spoken uh, uh, briefly about, the community and uh, what are some things that you would like to really potentially see change within our community?
I think just going back into the word accountability, I think accountability is really an important thing. I think that a lot of times when these destructive patterns within our community come up and they're so prevalent, is because no one checked someone when they had a demeaning attitude or were speaking down on someone within our community. And
Yeah.
because they weren't checked, it allowed that to grow. And so when that grows, somebody else adapts to that same type of thinking and not really understanding how detrimental that is in upholding, the unity within our community. Um, Outside of accountability, also just the unity. Like we've moved away from, what our parents, our grandparents may have experienced when they were growing up, as far as like just being, seeing your neighbors as family and being able to rely and being able to trust on your neighbors. I think that we live in the day and age now to where most people don't trust their neighbors. Most people, don't really communicate with their neighbors and different things like that because we live in a time to where you just don't actually know what people are going through, but you also people have a lot of ulterior motives, so it's kind of hard for you to adapt. Like I think for me growing up, I grew up in a time to where my great grandparents owned their house on the street, and they owned that house for about 40 I think about 40 years. They bought the house in the 60s and we sold it in the I think like 10, 15 years ago. So they had it for a long time. They bought it, raised my mother in it. My mother raised her first four kids in it. And during that time, when my mother was growing up and we were growing up, the same people who lived there when she was growing up was living there when we were growing up. So we had the sense of community to where, everyone, for one, trusted each other, but not only that, everyone knew each other. So it was, if I was out doing something and I got caught, I knew that whoever it was down the street, they're going to report that back to my mom, or they're going to report that back to my great grandparents, or my brother was doing something and somebody seen him out, and they're either going to call him on it or they're going to report that back to my mom. So we had this sense of not only community but security, knowing, understanding that I can't just be out doing whatever I want to do because somehow this is going to travel back to my home. And so that fear kind of got you in place of wanting to act right. And I think that unity is not something that we're missing today's day and age. I don't know if we'll ever get back to it, just considering the economy and people are moving around and trying to find places to raise their families, because it's hard for one to attain or buy a house now. And, the economy is getting worse and worse. But I think that, if we are ever able to get back into that, I think that it will serve as a great purpose for us as well.
Yeah, no, hands down. The community is really, really big. And one thing that you touched on, Rama says, community mentality is vital to elevate the Black community, hands down. You know, when we talk about community, and you brought up this got to be a family. I love that house. When we talk about, you know, the Black community, you mentioned growing up, you had neighbors that held you accountable for your actions, right? Also, you know, aunts, uncles, grandparents. And today we don't have that anymore as much because people are moving, right? What do you think can be done for those children within the community that may not have a sense of community, right? Outside of, because you think of community for kids, it's like, do they even have community anymore? You know, do you have community at school? Do you have community at home? Like, what do you think that we can do as a culture to ensure that the young folks of today have community?
That's a good question. To answer the second question before I answer the first question, I don't know. I don't think that there is a sense of community anymore, just because I don't think that kids are getting out as much as they once were 10, 20 years ago. And so kids don't know, you know, a lot of times the kids are going to school with somebody, maybe going to school with somebody for 10 years, and they may be next door neighbors, but they've never spoken to each other, and it went through first grade through sixth grade together, and find out in seventh grade, like, oh, you know, you're a really cool person. I didn't know that because I wasn't ever outside. I think a lot of things we can do in terms of just upholding that community, just getting them to different things, whether that's sports, whether that's the arts, you know, sign them up for musical lessons, sign them up for dance classes, taking them out in the summer to the community pool. I don't know if those are still a thing or not. But just doing things to where they are seeing the same faces every time they go out, opposed to, you know, just sitting in the house and, you know, maybe they go play basketball or maybe they go to piano lessons every other 2 years, and they're not having that consistency with seeing that same kid. So I think that's one thing that I enjoyed, is that all my sports, I played it at one park growing up. So I saw those same kids every single year, whether it was for basketball, football, baseball, whatever the case may be. I knew those kids because we were seeing each other probably 40% of the year.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it Ock Family Q? Said kids don't, did I say that right? Kids don't even play outside anymore. That was a big part of community.
Yeah.
And you know what, like, I'm guilty. I have a 11-year-old and he does not go outside. Not like that. We just moved. We're in Auburn, Alabama now. And so he's not, there's no, like, he doesn't go outside.
Yeah.
However, the first thing that he's looking up is like, where can I go play sports at, right? How can I kind of get involved? We're in a digital era where all is lost. Yeah, I think a lot is definitely lost in a digital era. But I also do think that we can use what we have today to our advantages, right?
Yeah.
And I say this specifically because there are ways of building community that maybe might start off in a digital space, but can elevate to something else. Too many creeps to leave our kids outside. Yes.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
we can only do supervise outside. Yes. And so that's one of the reasons why my child doesn't go outside. It's because people will come and they will steal your child. So if you have to be outside with these kids. When I hear like community, one of my biggest things is getting involved in the schools. Yeah. Because there is just, I've got like this huge disdainment, although my child now goes to traditional public school because we don't have a real choice. Otherwise, I'm spending all this money out of pocket. I'm not a big advocate for public school because they don't encourage community, right? They don't encourage community for Black kids, Black and brown kids. And I actually had an incident that happened at my child's school. There's one 6th grade school in Auburn. And it's Black history, right? We're talking about it's Black history. And the place where they're supposed to feel safe at is in school. That's their community of friends, teachers. You take your child to feel safe at school. Well, last Friday, he comes home. We're having dinner. We went out for dinner. And he and I have a very open, relationship. He talks to me about his day, like in depth, right?
Yeah.
Not just like, how was your day? Oh, it was cool. Yeah. How this, that was, it was all right. No, like we have real eye to eye conversations. And, but he brought up, like, he was like, we watched a video today and it made me feel kind of weird. I was like, well, what was the video? Not really expecting, I'm thinking people got inappropriate with like, because he knows fully about how children are conceived.
Yeah.
I've had this conversation because I'm like, you're going to learn it because I'm not trying to be nobody's grandmama at the age of like, by the time I turn 40, I can't be a grandmother, you know? And so, so he knows fully where, you know, how that happens. I thought it was just maybe like maybe people got inappropriate. They hugged a little bit too long. I wasn't really expecting what he was going to say next, which was he watched some marching video and the police were beating these children. They watching this at the school.
That's a lot.
At the school.
Especially at that age.
At that age, right?
And that goes back into what I was telling you about just the messages about our people and who's sharing them. It was like, if it's not us sharing it, that can be shared as just a desensitized, like, I'm just going to show y'all this and I don't care how it affects because it doesn't affect me. So it shouldn't affect you. And a lot of times they take out that human value of it because, I mean, a lot of times they don't see us as humans still to this day, unfortunately. Yeah. So they take out the human value of that and not really understanding that this could traumatize an 11-year-old seeing that, especially being in Alabama.
Especially being in Alabama, and he's never been exposed to anything like that. Like, you know, my family, all of us have done pretty well for ourselves, and so he doesn't know. I know it may sound sheltered, but he doesn't know a struggle. Like, he doesn't know a struggle. I've struggled. I was sleeping on floors, you know, not too long ago, right, a few years back. But the kid he is today does not know a struggle. And then on top of that, like, we're West African, so we didn't grow up in certain environments. Listen, my parents didn't grow up, you know, with going to riots or anything like that, right? We have our own set of issues back home where it's corruption and, you know, we got colonialism going on. Like, those are our struggles over there, right? Like, it's a third world country because all the money's going to some monarchy somewhere to fund their limousine rides or what the heck ever. So those were our, you know, sets of issues. And so he's just never really even been exposed to anything like that, even conversationally. And so just to watch it, and he's just like, I don't know how to feel. Like, even till now, he's like, I don't know how to feel about that. Yeah. And so for me, when I hear about community, it's, you know, how do we protect these children and really give them a chance at life, right?
I think, and then a lot of things. I mean, for one, I commend y'all on the relationship that y'all have, because I can understand just me being a child. Obviously, a lot of times you don't want to open up to your parents, but really being a boy, you really don't want to open up to your mom. And so that could be difficult. So for y'all to have that relationship to where he can tell you about, you know, his feelings and something like that, that's great. And that's like awareness that I didn't really accomplish until me being in my 20s. But even to go back into that, you know, being active within the school, I remember growing up, a lot of things happened to me. You know, when I was in elementary school, I came up in a public school. And a lot of times, you know, my mom wasn't active in the school, but there were certain things that would happen to her, like it may have some prejudice or racial undertone. And every time, you know, I would report back to my mom, like, because I got in trouble a lot as a kid, I'm gonna be honest. But a lot of times when I had to report back to my mom, and she was like, well, you know, why did the principal call me? Why did you do this? And I tell her the backstory, and she can recognize, like, no, that was racist. Like, I remember it was an incident to where I got into a fight with a kid on the playground, and the principal brought me into the office and brought the kid into the office. But with the kid's parents was there. My mom was never contacted. And so when I told her that would happen, my mom came to school and she raised hell. Like, no, we're not about to be doing this. Like, you did it because you tried to corner my kid and you tried to make him accountable for something that they both should have been accountable for. And for you to be having, you know, two parents in here and none of his parents are contacted, you're basically like trying to bully him and back him into the corner. So I think that is an integral part in the community is also, like you said, the parents being active in what's going on in school and understanding, having a conversation of, what's being taught in the curriculum and different things like that.
Yeah. I mean, like so hands down. And so, yeah, I showed up and I have things in writing. I made sure they gave me a nice email record. And next, I'm going to the school board meeting. I'm like, school board meeting is set for it's in a couple weeks, and I'll definitely be there. One of the things that not a new passion of mine, but I'm really excited. I recently joined an organization called Ambassador of Change, right? And because you have all these issues that us as Black people go through, definitely Black women. Hold on, that's good that he recognizes his uncomfortable feelings and expresses it. Yes, it really is. It really, really is. It's something I'm super proud of, and that's another thing, like allowing not just like I think we talk a lot about Black men should have a safe space. Black women definitely should, but like Black kids need to have such a safe space because those Black children, I call them little adults, right? However they are right now is how they're going to grow up to be. And all of us are going to need therapy at some point in time, one way or another. But like, so I don't focus on parenting the right, like there's no such thing as correct parenting. That's not but just providing the tools and saying it's okay to understand your feelings. And I don't let him get away with things like, how are you feeling? Oh, I'm okay. No, what does that mean? Right? But anywho, so like going not just to the school is what I found, is going to that next level.
Yeah.
And getting change from a political perspective. And that's one of the things I'm really, really excited to watch AOC grow and make impact from a political perspective. What are your thoughts about, the policies and, what kind of policies should we kind of be looking out for as we, to continue to evolve?
I'm gonna be completely honest with you. I'd stay away from politics. And politics, like I know I should follow it too much. So like the past 2 or 3 elections, as far as local elections, I did pay attention to certain things that were being introduced and certain things that were trying to be passed and different things like that.
Yeah.
But prior to that, I just didn't care at all. I've had the mindset of, they tell us that, your voice counts. And I always had just the mindset of like, my voice doesn't actually count. Like whether I submit to the ballot or whether I vote on something, it doesn't actually change. So I'm really in the infancy stage of understanding the policies that are being introduced and policies that are being passed. I'm doing more research now because I understand how important that is. I understand how those policies shape and affect those kids that are in public schools and elementary schools and middle school and different things like that. But because I'm in infancy stage, I don't have too much of an idea of different policies and different things like that. I have seen a conversation surrounding critical race theory and people who are opposing that, and my mind is blown. I'm not surprised, but my mind is blown by the reasons why they're saying critical race theory is not needed. But
can you explain what's critical race theory?
Basically, the curriculum they're trying to introduce, and I don't know if it's every state, but teaching Black history, slavery, not even just Black history, minorities in this country in general, people of color in general, teaching the history the correct way, and basically holding America accountable for their wrongdoings. And they're trying to implement that curriculum in, I believe, each level, middle school, elementary, and high school. And to no surprise, the majority of America is fighting against implementing that because America doesn't want to be held accountable for their wrongdoings in terms of their racial background or racial history. Yeah.
Well, one of the you mentioned earlier Black History Month and how it was so big for you growing up in Compton, right? When you were in the city. So when you said that, to be very honest, I have mixed feelings. I have mixed feelings about Black History Month because while it's a time for us to be celebrated, it's also the shortest month of the year. It's not even a consistent month. Some days, some months, some years it's longer than others, right? And then Black history is just history.
Yeah.
So for me, like, why do we need a Black History Month, when we just should be celebrated and spoken on
all
every
year.
single, like, why are we just not in the curriculum?
Yeah.
Period.
I wholeheartedly agree with you with that. And I see a lot of people who share those same sentiments, and I don't disagree with that at all. For me, I think it's more selfish. My birthday is in February. Uh,
Happy birthday.
Thank you. My birthday is February, so naturally, I just love the month of February. So for
Yeah.
my birthday to be aligned with that month, also one of my biggest role models that I've never met is Malcolm X, and unfortunately, he was assassinated in February. But that is another reason to celebrate and accommodate February. So many things happen in February, and February is a condensed month. But I just love the month just in general. So the fact that that month is aligned with that month, I love it. But I wholeheartedly agree that that should be a part of American history. But I mean, this is America, so we know that that is going to be just something that they're never going to try to intertwine. And I'm not going to say I'm okay with it, but I love celebrating my people and that not being intervened by anybody. Like I don't want my history to be downplayed or minuscule being told by someone who actually don't care about me. So I think when you have a month that's focused on that, even if it is the shortest month, we have a month that's focused on that. That gives me a lot of sense of pride. And I think that that was implemented from me growing up in the school district to where you had a whole month celebration of that month. And so I think from a kid to now to an adult, it's a really important month to me because that was kind of implemented and ingrained in me from such a young age.
Yeah. So, taking, the thrills about Black History Month that you fully enjoy, right? What could we do to ensure that Black history is honored all the time?
I think share the stories. Not even I think, I know. Share our stories. Like what we see a lot of time in Black History Month is a lot of these awesome stories. This person invented this person did this person accomplished this. And a lot of those stories are shared more in February than any other month. We may see it now that Juneteenth is commercialized. You'll see it shared on Juneteenth. But for majority of my life, those stories that were shared and things that were accounted for happened in February and only February. So we move out of not celebrating birthdays in just February and celebrating accomplishments in just in February. We move out of February and share all month long. I think the generation after us starts to understand that, okay, these stories are important, and it's not just an assignment for school for me to write this biography off of this person who accomplished a certain thing. In March or in November, I can still be doing my research and finding out who invented the light bulb, who was Madam C.J. Walker, who did certain things like that. I think that when we continue to share the stories and share that these stories are important, I think that that kind of gets ingrained into the younger generation, and then they take that and run with it and spread it out throughout the whole year.
Yeah, no, that was so good. I feel like you got like a teleprompter in front of you. Where do you get your passion for Blackness, right? I mean, we spoke before we hopped on, so you can share some of your background. But once you do that, like, I really want to know, where do you get your passion for Blackness?
I think number one is my family. I think just like I grew up with a grandmother who, and still to this day, she actually just found a lot of them, who I can go to her house and she has, Jet magazines, Ebony magazines laid out on her coffee table. And I understood that representation matters. She did certain things like try to implement, different, her research on different, whether it was African food, African cuisine, or wearing garments that resembled that of what people in different countries in Africa wear. I'm a very curious person. So when I see certain things like that, I want to know why someone is doing that. And when I find out why they was doing that, I want to find out the backstory on where that comes from. But also when I go back into just me being curious, finding out different stories. Like I remember being very young and speaking about Jet magazines. I remember being maybe like 8 or 9 years old and seeing a story of Emmett Till. And my mom telling me, like, I didn't read the story, but I saw the picture. And that picture was so gruesome. And I asked my mom, like, what was this about? And she told me the backstory of Emmett Till. So now I'm 8, 9 years old and I want to research what exactly happened. Why did this happen? And so now I'm more curious about different things that go on like that. in elementary, I didn't read too much outside of biographies, and majority of the biographies I read was sports, whether it was Michael Jordan, whether it was Hakeem Olajuwon, whether it was Jackie Robinson. The majority of the books I read were biographies. And then I don't remember what grade it was. It may have been fifth or sixth grade. I discovered the autobiography of Malcolm X, and that changed my world. I remember I used to always see the movie come on BT when I was young, and would see that was 4 hours young, and I mean 4 hours long, and I would never watch it. It was like, there's no way I'm going to watch a 4 hour movie. But then I discovered that book, and I read the entire book, and I was like, okay, now I want to watch the movie. And so the story of Malcolm X in itself was one that really sparked that interest in my mind and let me know that it's okay to be very prideful in who you are and very prideful in your identity, because a lot of people teach you, and a lot of things that we see in media are telling us that it's not okay to be that. But here I have this man who lived his life for X amount of years in his life as an ex-con, as a thief, or whatever the case may be, and then he goes to prison and he's transformed his life, and now he's broadcasting the importance of having Black pride. And so that was like, okay, now this has sparked the idea in my mind that, you know, I should, at the very foremost, should be very prideful in who I am and what I look like and where I come from.
Yeah, no, that's I really love that response, of just wanting to understand who you are and then just being proud, right, of who you are, as a whole. How does that play into your current career? Because you are a media planner.
Media planner.
What does that mean? How do you plan media?
So I'm an integrated media planner. There's two different planners. So there's digital media planners, people who work in they work on social, work on like different websites like YouTube and different things within the digital realm. And then there are traditional media planners who do newspapers, do radios, do TV and things like that. And so with an integrated media planner, it's all that. So I work across TV, I work across radio, podcasts, social, digital, and different things like that. And essentially, I work for a streaming company. And so the basis of my, I guess, job is, you know, when new shows come, the client comes to us and say like, hey, we have this show. We're planning on releasing it around this time of the year. We want you all to find out who our audience is and how we're going to target our audience and make sure we get the most out of what we are funding for this campaign. And so on our end, we have to go back and do a research and find out what the medium age of people who want to tune into this type of show is. The people who love this type of genre, you know, where they live, what is the gender splits, what are their backgrounds, and then we figure out how to target them. Like, okay, this person loves drama, or this person loves mysteries, or whatever the case may be. We should have a TV commercial in Law and Order. We should have a TV commercial in Grey's Anatomy. If they love reading, if this show is based off of a book, we should find different mediums to target them within the digital realm so they can, you know, if they're reading, they love reading, they love New York Times, more than likely we have an ad of New York Times, they're probably going to tune into our show. Another case is, you know, a lot of people, if it's a mystery thriller, we can find those fans on Twitter, because a lot of people on Twitter love to talk about if a show just aired, what they think are going to happen in the next episode or what they think are going to happen throughout the season. And so we make sure that our ads are placed within those fans of mystery thrillers on Twitter so that they can create that word of mouth for that. And just different things like that, really just figuring out who our target audience is for the shows that we are briefed on.
No, that's so cool. Like that's how fun of a job is that? Like, do you feel like you're working, like when you're doing that? Is that like work for you?
I do now. In the beginning, I did it. In the beginning, I did it. It was fun. I was wet behind the ears, so it was like my eyes were wide open. It was like, oh, wow, I really enjoy this, and I'm doing a lot of research. And so now I'm coming up on 3.5 years, and it's like, all right. I didn't did this so long, but it's still fun. It's definitely still fun.
Yeah. How do you see yourself growing, right, in that, like within what you're doing, you know, podcast-wise, and your understanding of how media works and really tapping into that psyche, right, of your target market, I think is really, really cool. So it's hard for me. I mean, you're a media planner, but like you're also like this researcher and this like analyst, and I said analyst. Jeez, how do you do it all week? When you start with words.
Um, for me, a lot of times when we have things, whether it's of passion or not, you have to find that balance of, okay, whether you take that step and commit yourself fully to what you're doing on the side, or whether you continue to balance both things. And it's never really a perfect answer for that. And I think that's where I am at now. I really love what I'm doing on my podcast. I really love the growth that I'm doing on my podcast.
Yeah.
But a lot of the stuff that I'm learning in my career is helping me with my podcast. And so I'm doing the best balancing act I can as far as getting the most out of my career while also pouring into myself and my podcast and building up that brand. And so I think now I'm at a place where I'm just trying to find out, do I step out or do I stay here and also just do this on the side and pour in as much as I can? And it's really, it could get some days, some weeks it get really tiring because you're working somewhere for 9 hours out of the day. And then the extra hours after you get off, you're trying to, do what you're trying to do on the side. And I think up until recently, I found out that there was a way to do that without thinking that you have to do one without the other. So because I have been working here for 3 years, and my first 3 years, I got a promotion every year.
Wow.
And so once I got my third promotion, I was like, okay, even though this is not something that I was wholeheartedly interested in, this is something I'm clearly good at because I keep getting promoted. And so when I realized that, I was like, maybe I don't need to step away as soon, because I went into this career, how I stumbled upon this career, honestly, I graduated and couldn't find a job for 6 months. I had a friend that was in this industry, and they were looking for a job also, and someone recommended the job to them, and they was like, I don't want it, but I may have someone that's interested. And so they recommended me, and I went through the interview, and I crushed the interview, and I got hired. And ended up getting hired, went into that like, okay, I'm going to do this for a year and go on and find something else to do. And here we are 3.5 years later, and I'm still here. And so those promotions that I kept getting was motivation to let me know that, for one, it validated me. It let me know that, for one, I was really good at what I was doing. Yeah. But two, letting me know that I don't have to exactly step away right now. I can continue to figure out what I'm trying to do. And once I have that answer, if I want to step away, I can step away. Or if I don't, I'm not wrong in that either.
Yeah, no, I really love the thought process of it's okay to do both, because I think we during the panoramic during the pandemic there was this and then after, right, like I think up until late last year, I'd say Q4, when you started to see these layoffs, and definitely here in Q1 you're starting to see a whole bunch of layoffs in the technical spaces and just different spaces, right? Everywhere, everyone's laying off. It's just natural. The economy poured, so there was so much money flooding the economy that it's time for a rebalance, right? And so it's how I look at what's happening right now. But there was this mindset of like, forget my job, but like there's so much that you learn on the job, and that it would take you years to learn that in your business. And so you have people that, were disrespecting their jobs, right? And leaving them. And then they're like, I can be a business owner, I can be an entrepreneur. And then they go down that path and realize, oh my gosh, this is hard. This is so hard.
Everything I would have cracked up to be.
It's like, wait, if I don't work, I don't eat. You don't just get a check.
Yep.
Right? Like, you can't. Have you seen that dog? Well, I don't know. You're a guy. But there's this dog on social media. Y'all, if y'all know who this dog is, it's like Pooch the something. On social media, I love this dog. I'll actually post the dog sometimes in my story. I love this dog. But the dog will be like there, like your manager thinks you're working, but what you're actually doing. What your manager sees versus what you're actually doing, right? And so it's like, and then what you're actually doing is like just XYZ, like just typing a bunch of nonsense. And so people, like, you can get paid and still do that.
Yeah.
Right? Versus like, no, when you're on your own and you don't do nothing, you actually do not eat. And so I think it's respecting the job and respecting the purpose. Why are you actually there? If it's just to collect the check, then hey, that's what it is. As a leader at work, one of my big things is I like people to own their processes and like own your stuff. Like this is your
Yeah,
business. I don't care if like whatever you're responsible over, think about it as your business. Okay, that's
yeah,
your business. My job is to pour as much skills into you so that hey, when it is time, if you do ever want to walk away, you are at least equipped with the skill set that you need in order to be profitable in business, not just
exactly. And that's very
the
important.
dog with the glasses. Yes, Rama. The dog with the glasses. The dog.
Yeah, and I mean that's very important too, because like a lot of times, like they say, time is one of the most precious commodity, and you don't want to be dedicating 8 hours of your day to something, or 9 hours of your day to something. Some people it's even longer, it's 12 hours a day to something for X amount of years, 5 times out of the week, and then you walk away from that and you have nothing. To walk when you walk away, you have nothing. You don't have no skills. You don't have any information, and now you're just out here starting over again. Like I saw that in my job search. I was a paralegal for 3.5 years when I was in the Air Force. Got out and I went to school and I entered back in the job market, and it was a wake up call. They're like, wow, whenever I get hired, I'm going to be at entry level. Despite the fact that I have been a paralegal from age 18 to 21 and I have all this job experience, I'm going into a new market, I'm going to a new field, and they don't care about what I did for those 3 years. And so now I got to pick back up and I got to start from the very beginning. And that was a wake up call for me. And a lot of times it felt demoralizing going, interviewing for jobs and understanding that it was going to be an entry level job. And so now I realize that, okay, if I was to ever leave from here, if I was ever to get fired, I'm walking away with more knowledge than I came in with. And I know how to articulate the knowledge I have. That's where I was wrong in, leaving the Air Force, is that I was a paralegal and that's just what I was for 3 years. I know how to articulate everything I did. I know how to write down all the things that I've accomplished and things that I was doing, but I couldn't particularly articulate that. But now I know how to articulate every single thing that I've done. I know how to speak to my resume without looking at my resume, and that's an important skill.
Yeah, it's such an important skill. And at work, I actually we just one of my teammates he just extended an offer to someone, and this person just came out of the military as well, and so in the interview it was like, okay, what are you saying? So like translating the job that he did in the military to this is civilian life. And one thing that my team member is really proud of is being able to give him this opportunity, because you're right. Most people don't. They won't give you the opportunity because you don't speak, the lingo, the language. So yeah, I think that's a really powerful. Being able to speak to your resume, right, and walk away with something. So this has been like just such an incredible conversation. I can talk all day, because I have way more questions. But I like to be respectful of folks' time because it is late. But before we kind of hop off or kind of go into closing, I would like you to share where I can find your podcast and what frequency you're posting, whatever you have coming up next.
Okay.
Tell us about what to look out for.
So you can find Speak My Peace podcast on just about every streaming platform that you may listen on. It is Speak My Peace podcast. Releasing episodes every Thursday, and then they're released later on YouTube on Saturdays at Speak My Peace Pod TV. That's the handle on YouTube. The cadence again is every Thursday for audio, every Saturday for video. You can follow me on TikTok at Speak My Peace Pod. Obviously here on my Instagram, Speak My Peace Pod as well. So please do make sure that you follow, and please do make sure that you tune in and subscribe, because I really appreciate it. And thank you.
It's not speaks. I can't type.
Speak my peace.
Did Mama help me out with that? No, she didn't. Speak my peace, and I think it's all one word. Speak my peace.
Yeah.
Pod. Yes, I think there we go.
Yeah.
This is. That's real spelling right there. All right, so before I let you go, before we hop off, you've said a lot of incredible things, but I really would like to know, out of all of your thought processes and beliefs and, words of wisdom, what is like the top one bar that you would drop if you couldn't drop anymore? That's me being a rapper right now.
I would say stay true to yourself. This sounds very cliche, um, but really just understand there's power in being unique. Like it's so easy to get comfortable and conform to what everyone else is doing or what you think is the right thing to do because a family member or a friend is doing that, and so you
Yeah.
just mesh in with them. But it's okay to stand out from the crowd. It's okay to have different opinions. It's okay to be proud of yourself, and it's okay to speak about things, and it's really okay to express your feelings. I think we're in a time and an age to where people are being more open and transparent, and just understand that there's power in being you and detailing your journey and detailing your peaks and your valleys. I've learned that at I feel like a very late age in my life. But after
You just turned 30.
you see, but I just discovered that a couple years ago, and I understood just like how that affected me at a younger age, and not being able to express things and not being able to stand in my truth. How keeping things inside, how that affected me. Um, I feel like I have a new lease on life because I'm more open and transparent now and able to share just my journey.
Yeah, no. I really love that. I love that so much. Well, thank you so much for sharing those final words with us and just sharing your time and your thoughts. And this is just a great conversation.
Thank you so much. Thank you for
Yeah,
having me.
super incredible way to wrap up Black History Month for SIPS. Okay, so this is really great. So enjoy the rest of your evening there on the West Coast. It is 5 o'clock, right? Is it 5 o'clock?
This about to be 6. This turned 6.
So you're only 2 hours behind. Why did
Yeah,
I think it was 3?
that's Alaska. Alaska is 3 hours behind.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, only 2. I still got enough time to cook
Yeah,
and
yeah.
cook dinner
So
all night.
6 o'clock. Yes. Well, enjoy the rest of your evening, and thank you so much. And thank you all for tuning in.
Thank you.
Until next time, we'll be right back. I think, am I back next Thursday? I may be back, or maybe a bye week. I can't remember. But anywho, y'all be sure to check out Sips and Conversations podcast on YouTube. Catch the replay here. Share this video because it's definitely going to be posted. And we will see you next time.
Thank you.
All right, bye.
Baby, you don't know. No one come and take your place, 'cause the love you give, it can't be replaced.